Panther people, what up? We're going to talk about how Steve Wilkes is the interim head coach. Could he actually be the long-term head coach for the Carolina Panthers? And also, they head to Southern California to take on the Rams. Are they going to win or are they going to upset the champs? Once Steve Wilkes was announced as a secondary coach that this dude's going to be the interim head coach at some point this year. It's not a matter of if, but when. Turns out it is right now. The Carolina Panthers announced that the Charlotte native is the interim head coach for this team for the next 12 games. And so my thought is, I didn't realize that the Carolina Panthers have lost their identity as much as they did when they hired Matt Rhule, until the social team, who from now I understand are unshackled from the control of said Matt Rhule, when they posted a hype video of Steve Wilkes after his first press conference, talking about the keep pounding mentality, the winning mentality, the winning culture that this team, this franchise does indeed have. Even though it predated David Tepper, he may not realize that. But just everything he talked about, the seriousness, the clips, the reminiscing, the nostalgia, the Luke Kuechly's, the Cam Newtons, those guys who have been to Super Bowls, who've been to the playoffs, 3 straight NFC South championships, whatever, 7-8-1, doesn't matter. I forgot that. I just forgot what it felt like to have unquestionable pride in this team, the pride that I had, the pride that everyone had, in those winning years, and the identity of the keep pounding mentality, the hot southern sun in the morning against the Panther statue. So just all those things, I forgot that those existed. And then that just shows just how controlling Matt Rhule was, how sneaky he was, without even knowing that was gone. That was gone. Remember, when David Tepper first came here, one of the first things he wanted to get rid of was the keep pounding mantra. Like, how tone deaf could you be? And it's also funny that video was after David Tepper said those things, saying that the Panthers never had a winning culture, never had a winning trend. It's not a winning team. And then the social team, who he pays for, he pays their bills, then kind of did the counter with that entire clip, kind of showing him, educating him, like, hey, man, we have one here. We've been to the Super Bowl twice since we've been around, since 95. And it was interesting. It was almost like there's a little bit of in-house tension. Hey, the owner says this, but we're the real ones. We know what's up, including Steve Wilkes. So I thought that was kind of cool. More on Steve Wilkes. Obviously, the guy's just a completely different person than Matt Rhule. One thing that I liked about his initial presser and the ones after that, he's not preaching. He's not mansplaining. He's not coach-splaining. He's just not using cliches, not making pop culture references a la, Jay-Z. He's just a head coach. He acts like a head coach. He acts like a cool older dad or a cool stepdad. He's got the Jordans on. If Matt Rhule wore Jordans like that, it'd be kind of like an ironic fashion, saying that he lost a bet with the players or something like that. But it's just an effortless cool with Steve Wilkes. And the way he talks, he's professional. He's to the point. He's obviously no nonsense. And it's just refreshing. And that normally does happen with NFL franchises. You get a guy who's a charismatic, players coach or whatever you want in a Matt Rhule. And then once that person's jettisoned, you bring in a new coach who's a bit more stern, a bit more professional. And that's what you get in Steve Wilkes. And he is an actual coach. Like Matt Rhule coaches everybody. Steve Wilkes is a secondary defensive coach. And you can tell that this guy is not fucking around. But yeah, he's a nice breath of fresh air, honestly. It's great to see him. I hope, and according to David Tepper, I don't really trust him because he likes the big shiny things, according to reports. Steve Wilkes, not shiny. He's not shiny. He's, like I said, kind of like that old shoe, that warm bed type of thing. He's just not the shiny name. And he wants to shine. And it's been already said, literally, Kay Adams has her own show, had one and only Sean Payton on the air, asked him, so when David Tepper called you, how did you react? And you're just like, what? Like, everyone knows they got the bromance. Everyone knows they're friends. I think Steve Wilkes has it in him, is set up to be the long-term head coach for the Carolina Panthers. Short answer, no, but it's not because of him. And you can look at the roster the way it is. Yes, there are other spots that the Panthers could build up on. Better tight ends. Another athletic linebacker in the mold of Frankie Louvu. A bit more safety depth. Who knows with Jeremy Chin? He's injured right now. You can improve the offensive line. You can always improve the offensive line. Another defensive tackle. But at the end of the day, and I just pulled the Matt Rhule there, the Panthers were always a head coach, an NFL caliber head coach, and a starting caliber quarterback away from being good, from being fun to watch, and maybe dabble in an offensive coordinator there. Steve Wilkes has been hired as a head coach. He was a lame duck head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. There's a lawsuit pending with that, but you can tell that he is a leader of men. That is something that David Tepper wanted. That is something that Greg Olsen and other NFL alumni have been saying. Greg Olsen said it on his podcast that he is a leader of men, whereas Matt Rhule is a leader of boys. That's why he deserves to be in college. You got the coach. I think he can galvanize this team. I really do. But you don't have the quarterback. He doesn't have the quarterback. Sam Darnold could be coming back. He could be activated this week or next week. Baker Mayfield, day-to-day, no surgery for that high ankle sprain. And P.J. Walker is going to be most likely starting against the Los Angeles Rams. That he is going to be starting because Steve Wilkes said yesterday Baker's not going to play on Sunday if he hasn't practiced at this point. And what do we know about P.J. Walker? Yes, he's a gunslinger. Yes, he's super athletic. But if you want to give credit to one thing Matt Rhule has pointed out, and it's true, is that every game P.J. Walker has a rushed, errant throw that gets picked off and puts the defense in a precarious position. He's really no different than Sam and Baker in that situation. He is not an upgrade. There's a reason why he's a third-string quarterback. There's a reason why if Matt Corral wasn't injured right now, he probably would be starting. So it's not it. Like, both these guys are auditioning for jobs, whether it's with the Panthers or for other teams. But P.J. Walker isn't going to help Steve Wilkes get this job long term. He's just not. He's gonna be the biggest hurdle, honestly, in my opinion. Why they don't win games. And so this is what I think. If I'm Steve Wilkes' manager, this is what I'm thinking, that if he can show that he can galvanize this squad, even if they don't win a bunch of games in the next 12 weeks, if they can just be close. Because David Tepper said in that game against San Francisco 49ers, it was noticeable. There was a lack of intensity on this team in a game that you had to win to save your coach's job, to save yourself from this chaos. Or as Steve Smith said in his Cut To It podcast, the emotional roller coaster that these Panthers are now going to be on for the rest of the season and off season. They could have prevented all that if they had just beat the San Francisco 49ers, but there was no intensity. That's on them. That's not on the coaches. And so if Steve Wilkes could intensify this squad, to galvanize them, electrify them, motivate them to play hard. And I know it sounds crazy. Like, I'm never going to question someone's intensity and their fight. But if he can make it close against the Rams, maybe even take the lead, even if they lose against them, Tampa Bay, Baltimore, Cincinnati, all these, prominent teams in the NFL, if he can just have a fight, maybe keep it to the last second. If you lose by field goals after a hard-fought, bloody, muddy, rainy fight, for the next 12 weeks, he deserves 100% a look from upper management here with the Carolina Panthers. Or maybe he can pull a Dan Campbell, who was an interim coach of the Miami Dolphins. He had them fight harder with a C-plus roster, a roster that is way worse than the Panthers roster. It's a good roster we got, minus the quarterback. If he can show the NFL that what he can do with this team, he might be auditioning. Well, he is auditioning for another job. Maybe he gets a job with the Denver Broncos, whose quarterback is kind of out of whack right now, but they got a good roster. These guys had Super Bowl aspirations this year. That's why they're paying Russell Wilson $250 million. Maybe they think they need a grown-up in a room who's been there before in Steve Wilkes. Hey, look what he did with the Panthers. They didn't even have a quarterback. We have a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Let's bring him in 23-24. So I think that's the best thing for him. I think that's the outlook. I know he says he's not thinking about the future, but that's, in my opinion, if I'm his family, if I'm his manager, that's the way I look at this situation. It is a good roster minus the quarterback. If he can win despite that, or just show that, hey, I'm firing these guys up. They want to come to work. They are playing hard, and they're giving the Super Bowl champs a hard time in LA, and he can sustain that for the next 12 weeks. Hell yeah, all for it. Because the guy jacks me up when he talks, despite the fact that he's ice cold. I love it. And hey, if the players like him and they show it on the field, I'm all for it. And if they can actually find a hotshot offensive coordinator, Panthers culture pointed out, I should have looked it up, but when he was the head coach with the Arizona Cardinals, who was his offensive coordinator? Byron Leftwich. Would Byron Leftwich want to come to be an offensive coordinator for another team? Probably not. But if you can find a hotshot or believe in a hotshot offensive coordinator and groom him, and he and a rookie quarterback can grow together with this team? Hell yeah. Nico Ryans is one of the guys because just imagine him with this defense that we have. He could talk to guys like Frankie Louvu, Brandon Smith, who's a physical freak, and then how he can mold these young linebackers the same way and to kind of have the same type of career he had with the Houston Texans when he played for them. So I think he's definitely one head coach in Canada that I would look at. You saw what he did with the Carolina Panthers last week. One of the other coaches that I'm looking at, I'm not going to go into a deep list because honestly, I'm not watching a lot of these guys right now. You better believe I am now. Be watching these teams like the Lions, the Jets, the Eagles, obviously the Bills, because they all have offensive coordinators right now who people that I'm seeing on the interwebs all are suitable coaching candidates for the Carolina Panthers. And I mentioned this before about the video, about the culture, about the brand, about, talking about the winning ways this Panther team had and how that hype video with Steve Wilkes resonated with not just me, but everybody, including former players. If the Panthers can get someone like that, who's been there, who's witnessed this winning culture, but is an offensive-minded coach, if they want to go in that direction, because you hire offensive-minded head coach, they're not going anywhere. That's where they are at. They're going to be there, and they're going to be there to groom the rookie, because there's going to be a rookie quarterback next year, guys. It's just going to happen. I don't think you have to look any further than Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator with the Buffalo Bills. There are so many factors that just make it make sense. First of all, Carolina North with the Buffalo Bills, that pipeline it is stronger than ever. It is stronger than the Keystone Pipeline, which I think got shut down. I should probably know that since I'm in news. But the Carolina-Buffalo connection, not just that, he coached Cam Newton. He's been with the Carolina Panthers as a QB coach in the Super Bowl years. So he's been there to mentor Cam during the MVP season. He played for the Miami Hurricanes team, that one of my favorite college football teams of all time. He's played in the NFL. He's played at a high level. He played for the Toronto Argonauts, for God's sakes, as our quarterback. I remember when they picked him up, like, oh, this guy, he's going to take us to the Grey Cup. That's our Super Bowl, by the way. He's been there for the winning culture. It just makes sense. And you don't have Cam Newton next year if you pick up Dorsey as your head coach. But who is a guy in the college ranks right now who many people regard as a Cam Newton clone, even goes to the university he started off his collegiate career at? Anthony frickin' Richardson. He is the Cam Newton clone. You can get him not in the first 10 picks. You can probably get him. You can almost trade down, depending on how high pick the Panthers are picking. You can almost trade down, getting another second or third or maybe another first-round pick. Get that defensive guy. Maybe it's a Will Anderson. If there's a run on the top-tier quarterbacks like Levis, Stroud, and Young, you can get Will Anderson for the defensive line, couple him up with Brian Burns, and then later on the first round, you can pick up a guy like Anthony Richardson. To the game. Now to the game against the Los Angeles Rams, who are coming off being embarrassed at home against the Dallas Cowboys. No disrespect in that. The Cowboys are flying high right now with Cooper Rush. But these are the Super Bowl champs. I'm going to get right to it. I think the Panthers are going to get that head coach bump in intensity. I think that's going to happen. I think the players are you can already see that the players are, supportive of this decision. They like the man in Steve Wilkes. Well, I mentioned before that, he was, welcoming guys like Ike Ekwonu when he came to Mint Street after getting drafted. So I think everybody on the team, not just on the defense, have respect for him. I think the intensity is going to be there. I think the effort's going to be there. But like I said before, with a quarterback like P.J. Walker, he's a gunslinger up against a pretty good secondary with the Los Angeles Rams, a guy like Jalen Ramsey, up against our best receiver, whether you consider that to be Christian McCaffrey or DJ Moore. Can P.J. Walker move on from his first read, whether it's those two guys in Moore and McCaffrey, and get the ball to Shi Smith, to Terrace Marshall, who made a couple good catches against the 49ers, to Robbie Anderson? Can he make those accurate bomb throws down the seams for Robbie? Can he find the tight ends in those easy throws to try to get comfortable? I think that's going to be the key. I think the defense can stand up against this offense. The Rams' offensive line, obviously missing Austin Corbett right now. Stafford getting beaten up a lot this year. He had the elbow issues in the offseason. I think it's still bothering him right now. Everyone in the world knows that Cooper Kupp is his number 1 read and number 2 and number 3 read. He is going to be up against J.C. Horn if he's healthy. If that rib is not good, and it's going to be Cooper Kupp against either Dante Jackson, who he's got a height advantage against. It could either be C.J. Henderson, who has been shaky, who's been prone to making really game-deciding, game-changing pass interference penalties. Or could it be Keith Taylor, who hasn't really been matching up against first receivers right now? So I think if we're talking about J.C. Horn being healthy, let's be optimistic here, up against Cooper Kupp and the defensive line, our defensive line, who is fast, quick, guys like McCall in the middle, Brian Burns being fast here, been the subject of trade talks here. He's auditioning to whether stay in Carolina or be in another uniform by the end of the month. I think they could take advantage of this beat up offensive line of the Rams and give Matt Stafford a hard time, make him make dumb throws, because he does do that. He does make dumb decisions. We've seen that in his time in Detroit, and so I think the defense again is gonna keep the Panthers competitive, but they can only do it for so long. The wheels could fall off, if they're just continuously being asked to get on the field if the offense cannot convert on third down. And so it could get ugly in the second half. And so it's really on the offense to keep the defense off the field. Obviously get points on the field. Like, I sound like Matt Rhule right now, but the pressure is on Ben McAdoo to prove that he deserves to be here. They could have fired him. They fired Joe Brady last year and they put someone else in, but they kept McAdoo. He got P.J. Walker auditioning to continue his NFL career, but it's on those shoulders. No pressure there. You still got Christian McCaffrey. Just as much of a gunslinger that P.J. Walker is, make those easy passes, those intermediate passes that Baker Mayfield fails to do, to get comfortable, and then take those shots. Keep the defense honest, that have to maintain their focus on Christian McCaffrey as a runner and a passer. And then maybe make it close. But really and truly, for the rest of the year, until they play a team that's a bit closer to them, talent-wise, like the Falcons, the Bengals, it seems right now, against teams that just won a Super Bowl last year, that have something to prove, really have a lot of serious pressure on them, like the Rams. I just don't think the Panthers are going to win at the end of the day. I think they're going to fight. God, I hope they do at this point. Like, I don't know what else you need to motivate yourself, but I think the Panthers are going to lose this one away. Aaron from Unnecessary Bluntness is there. So if you are a Rams fan, you see him, just give him a high five. Just be nice. We've gone through a tough time. Panthers lose 30-16. Let me know what you think about your score predictions. Let me know. Do you think Steve Wilkes should be the head coach long term? Or do you think they should be giving it to some hotshot offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator? Don't say Dan Quinn around me. I want something shiny and new. That's just the way I am. Let me know in the comments below. See you guys Sunday night.